It started recording.
Some of the best stuff happens before you hit record. You know that. You know that about radio.
What, the best stuff? Your orgasm?
No, the best stuff happens before you hit record.
Yeah,
it's like with music and stuff. Like everybody's like, you know, some guy will play like the perfect riff on guitar, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's awesome. Were you recording?" They're like, "No." Can you remember that riff? No. You know.
Well, you know, that's not going to happen to us. We're awesome.
And I don't know, man. I don't know. I wouldn't say awesome. Well, I don't know.
We're spectacular.
I think the jury's still out on that, but
do you know what we are?
What are we?
We're sitting pretty in Salt Lake City. Mark Goldfingers Hansen and J.R. Tarina the Butcher, the Golden Tongue, talking about metal.
Goldfingers?
And other shit. Well, yeah, you're a guitarist, right?
I don't know.
You don't know? I think you do know.
That's debatable.
You can't do that kind of thing on the air.
What?
What did you say? Oh, debatable. Never mind.
What did you think I said? The N-word?
No, master debate.
Oh, that's the M-word. No, yeah, no. I said it's debatable. It's like when people like ask, "Hey, are you a musician?" I'm like, I don't think so, really. I mean, I play guitar. Pardon?
You said the N-word. Is that napalm?
Napalm? No, I didn't say N-word.
So if people ask you if you're a musician, you say no?
I start hemming and hawing. I start going, I don't know if I'd call myself a musician, just because I don't think I'm that good. I don't think I'm good enough. I mean, but the thing is maybe I am, because like I play guitar, and I technically I write music. Like I'll make up riffs.
Well, then thus you are a musician.
But I just don't think I'm worthy of that term. I don't know why.
I think you should embrace that term, because you actually do play guitar. You're old school. You're an older person, and you're not like most of these bedroom band guys that are just doing stuff on their computer or even on their phone and just putting it up on SoundCloud for free.
I wish I was. I wish I was one of those guys. I wish I knew how to like actually record myself decently. Like I can't even. That's the thing. Like, is like, okay, dude, I've been playing guitar for like fucking since I was 13, maybe 12 years old, right? I'm 46, so that's
about like 5-6 years ago.
75 years I've been playing guitar, and I never learned like theory or anything like that. Which, you know, people are like, well, that's fine, you're self-taught, blah blah blah. Great, but like, I don't even know how to. I can't even program like a drum machine. I don't even know like what time signature I'm playing in half the time. I just assume it's 4. So I'll pull up.
Know all that.
Pardon?
Why do you have to know all that? You're just playing the play, and you can still record and make music. You don't have to know how to
do.
Particularly, I mean.
Well, you have to know what time signature you're in, and you have to know how to like program drums in that time signature. So I just assumed that I'd be playing in 4/4, right? So I'll be like, okay, well, I'll just pull up like a 4/4 like metronome or something like that, and then I'll play the riff I'm trying to like kind of create, and it's not fitting. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So one time I like the drummer for my other band, Super So Far, I played like a riff for him. I'm like, hey man, can you tell me what time signature this is? And he starts counting, like hitting his knee. He's like, oh, that's in 7. Like 7? So I'll go, okay, this riff I have is in 7/8 time signature. So I'll go and I'll pull up like a 7/8 like click track kind of thing. And I don't know when to come in, because like it's like tick 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 tick, and it's like, and then I just get fed up, dude. It's so frustrating. So the whole self-taught thing is like a bullshit, and I probably bought into it. But like, I don't need to learn how to make music. I play by feel, man. You know, those fucking idiots.
Well, then what's the big deal? Why don't you just go get a few like lessons from somebody?
Because I'm a horrible student. I've tried getting, like, I took lessons from probably one of the best guitar players, I think, almost in the world. He's a local guy. His name's Terrence Hansen. And I've known him so long. I knew him when he was called Terry Hansen, and he was like 19, and I was like 14. So I've known him almost over 30 years. He's so good that he basically just like, like one guitar is not enough. So he starts playing, he plays two guitars at a time and just like taps everything and just does this crazy, like out of this world type stuff. But I was like, I'd frustrate the fuck out of him, I'm sure of it. I mean, he'd be cool, but I'd never learn anything. I'd just be like, hey, show me your riffs. I just wanted to see him play fast. But yeah, dude, I'm a really bad student. Like, and music theory. No, here's the airplanes. But music theory, it's like trying to teach me Chinese or something. I just don't know what I'm looking at, man. It's so frustrating because I have song ideas. Like I have all these riffs and kind of like things like rattling around in my head, but when I try to like extract them onto the guitar, it's like, wait a minute, that's not what I'm hearing in my head. Like I have like different notes in my head that don't exist in real life. I can't like play them.
Do you think that maybe you're a drummer instead?
Mm-mm.
No?
No way. No, I'm a guitar player. Well, no, because like part of my problem is like I'm so. I mean, I think I have like rhythm, like better than most white people, I think. And I credit my dad for playing a lot of R&B growing up. So I mean, I don't want to play drums. I want to play guitar. But my problem is like not really understanding like what drum beat I need to put under things, and what time signature it's in. Is it in 4/4? Is it in 3? Is it in 8? Is it in 7, 6, 5? Is it some Dream Theater weird 17/8 time or something like that? No, I don't know. And like drummers will be like, oh no, dude, it's easy. You just go. If you're playing 7, you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, or you can do 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like I totally just get confused already. I'm an idiot.
You know what you should do?
What?
You should play in like just the brutal, not technical death metal or black metal band.
Fuck that. If I'm gonna play death metal, man, I gotta do some
No.
technical shit.
The reason why is you should play in a band like that, and that will force you to gear it towards what you want, which is going to be technical, because that's how you are.
No,
So,
but because the thing is, I'll go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
well, I was going to say, if you're in a band with a bunch of novices who are doing this just like crazy, just noise, you'd be like, no, do this. I think you teach yourself, because I think you know how to do it. You're just not doing it for some reason, because no one's forced.
Well, I think I know what I want to hear. I just don't know how to realize it in like in this world. You know what I mean? Um, and the weird thing is like as much as I love death metal, like the stuff I play, I think I kind of told you that problem too. It's like I don't know if it's I'm so evil that the music I make is just happy. Because you know how like death metal guys are like the nicest people you've ever met in your life? They're almost like angels, right?
Angels?
Yeah, you meet like some guy like in a just a brutal death metal band, and they're like singing scary lyrics and gore lyrics and about Satan and shit. And then you meet them after the show, and they're like, "Oh, hey man, I really appreciate you coming out. Was it okay? Did I sound okay?" They're like, "Hey, can I get you anything?" They're helping old ladies across the road and stuff like that. You notice that? That's one of the reasons I like death metal is because I think the people are good. I think some of the best people are drawn to that music for some reason. But anyways, my problem is that my music's always like kind of hair metal mixed with R&B, and it's always kind of happy sounding. I don't I try to write like angry evil riffs and it just comes out like Winger trying to sound angry and it doesn't really work, you know, like Winger's happy. So I was like, okay, well I guess I gotta write happy shit. But I would love to play in a death metal band though. I wish I knew how. I wish I knew uh, how to play death metal.
Well, maybe you could do a new genre of death metal that's all your own.
Yeah, I thought about it, but I'm not good enough to play death metal. That's another one of those things. I actually have. There's a couple of like death metal tunes. I have like this little playlist of death metal tunes I want to learn to just to see if I can like if I can execute it, like learn another song, like somebody else's song, right? It might open up some doors and maybe like, oh, so that's kind of how they're doing it, or that, you know, these are the certain phrasings that they're using that makes it sound so dark and sinister, you know. But um, but yeah, you know, like there's a couple of death metal songs I'd love to just learn for fun, see if I can actually play it, you know, because once again, it's also the endurance it takes to like like the amount of practicing you have to do to even play like basic death metal. You have to practice your balls off, man. It's
How do you know that?
because, dude, if you play like even if it's like a 2.5 minute song, just a short grinding fucking grindcore song or something, and you're dude, you're sawing away for 2 minutes, you get tired. You know your wrists get fatigued really quick, or at least mine do. Like that's something you've got to build up over years, I think. You know, and me, I'm used to just playing more, you know, mid-paced. Like the fastest stuff I've ever played was in Category 5, but you know, that's not a speed metal band at all.
Do you air guitar or do anything like that when you're like, say, at work or something, or sitting on the couch?
Do I air guitar at
Like
work?
you're sitting on the
No,
couch, like
I do my
watching
fucking
TV.
job.
What's that?
No, I do my fucking job when I'm at work. I don't air guitar. No, I mean I know what you mean. And I do, but it's more of like
Where do you work?
I work at a parts company that just sells parts for like everything that's not automobile. So if you think about like everything that's not an automobile, we sell the part for it.
Like blenders,
Yeah,
vibrators?
blenders, vibrators, um, yeah, you know, auto blows, uh, sink stuff, washing machine,
Pinball machines?
pinball machines. No, we don't sell pinball because I actually thought about that because I was thinking like I bet I could make a pinball machine out of all the parts we have, but it'd be like this weird sort of fucking uh, Rube Goldberg looking weird thing with like you know, PVC pipe and you know, weird like
Well,
belts for tires and
I
tubes
was
and shit.
asking because I was wondering if you like, because I always drum all the time, no matter where I'm at, whether I'm at work, in a meeting at work with people talking, or like helping customers at the restaurant when I'm at the register. I'm always drumming, like, and sitting at the dinner table, like always doing double bass with my feet, like always. But I haven't actually played a real drum set in like decades because it just haven't. But I wonder how good I would be if I actually got and did it. But I've never learned music either. I can't read music, but I think I'd be pretty good on the drums after all this time.
You can get like one of those D drum kits that are like those electric kits, so you can play it in your apartment.
Are those pretty good? I mean, can you use headphones?
Yeah, oh, dude. Yeah, you just throw some headphones on and dude, they sound good these days. They're like the sound quality of those things is pretty remarkable. Um, in fact, like I think the most recent, like the last Category 5 album that Dustin kind of put together, I think the drums were, I mean, we used a real drummer, but he was playing on electric drums.
Actually,
I think they sound pretty good.
here's a trade secret. Well, I guess it's not a secret because they play live with them at Winterlore. Jeff, their drummer, he always has had the electronic kit, including the cymbals.
Well, if you think about it, like, look, dude, like, think about drum triggers, right? So almost every modern album has drum triggering these days. And all it is like they'll take a sample of the actual real drum. Yeah, so the guy in Winterlore, when he's hitting that D drum, he's probably got a sound loaded in from like a real kit, like a nice, maple shelled kit or whatever that he plays at home that he doesn't want to take out of the house or whatever. I mean, I don't know, like I still like real drums, but at this point like real drums, real amps, but I don't know why, because I think they're almost getting to the point where I can't tell the difference. It's just the old,
You know
kind
what?
of
My
boom
Korg,
and me.
I have a Korg X3 keyboard that was top of the line back in 1991 or two, around there.
Yeah.
And it's got really good, crystal clear, realistic drum sounds on it. The only thing that kind of might not sound so good, at least to a trained ear, like to someone who knows drums, i.e.,
Sure.
a musician,
Scott Burns.
is cymbals.
Oh, okay.
So you hit
Yeah.
and you get that kind of almost quasi-electronic. There's still a splash or a crash, but it just doesn't sound quite right. There's no like reverb. It's like a like that.
Right, because the decay of the cymbal is so random that it's hard to recreate digitally because there's so many frequencies going everywhere,
But get
and
this.
it's different, almost different every time you hit it.
Well, yeah, and like I never liked the cymbals. I always cringed because I was always trying to pass those off as real drums on certain things I did.
Hmm.
Some people can't tell though, or unless you put distortion or fuzz over it. But Beherit used a Korg X3 keyboard on his album Drawing Down the Moon,
Okay.
and they credited a drummer by the name of Black Jesus on that record, when in fact, I am 99.9% sure that Beherit on that album was just Holocausto, the one guy that does the band, and he just used Korg X3 and he used the drums on that just as the drummer. And I could tell because I recognize those drum sounds, but they sound real. But because I know fake drums and I also know that keyboard, I could hear it.
Ah.
But he also used other settings on it too, like the keyboard settings. Like there's a setting called 1950s sci-fi,
Uh-huh.
which has like a whoosh, it's like this dreamy kind of like tinkly noise, like you'd see on old black and white movies and TV shows like Lost in Space or Invasion of the Saucer Men. Well, that's on his album, and I go, oh, I know that sound for sure. So the more I heard the drums, I could tell that it was one of those. It was that keyboard. And guess who else has that keyboard? It's Peter from
Ooh.
Hypocrisy.
Oh.
Recognize it's not the drums
Yeah.
on his albums, but I recognize some of the sounds that he does on those as well.
Great minds, right?
It's totally identifiable, just like a Roland keyboard. Like there's a lot of Roland and Yamaha stuff out there, and I don't like
Uh-huh.
their stuff as much because it does sound more like MIDI digital, at least from that time, like the 90s. So keyboards are interesting. Of course, they've gotten better now. And like even just using
Sure.
Fruity Loops on my computer, like the drums are outstanding. Like they're totally real. You can't tell the difference.
Yeah. That's
Except
why.
programming a computer is a little harder to do stuff like a regular beat because you don't have that human element. It's just like a boom chick, boom chick, boom chick. It's
Right.
hard to get like the real. I mean, you can
Well,
play
yeah.
it like on an extended keyboard on your computer, but if you're gonna go all that route, you might as well just fucking get a real drum set or at least an electronic like one you can play. I
Yeah, yeah. Well, because there's still just the feel of a real drummer, although a lot of times with the Pro Tools and everything, they're even taking away the feel of the drummer because, naturally, certain drummers are going to, either play slightly behind the beat or ahead of the beat, and that's what kind of creates that tug, that causes you to nod your head, but when everything's just like right on top of everything, perfect timing, it's I think it can kind of take away from just like the human element of it, and that's actually, believe it or not, I mean, it's kind of my gripe with some of the newer technical metal bands is because they're so perfect, and I get the feeling they're just snapping it right into the drum grid on the computer after they play, so that it's just perfect timing, and you're just like, wow, and then all of a sudden it just sort of something drops out of it, which is interesting because like you know, I always bring up Cannibal Corpse. The first, I think it was like the first 6 albums of Cannibal Corpse, 6 or 7 albums. I don't know. They didn't use a click track. And you know what that is, right? It's just basically a
Yeah, like
beat.
a pentameter, basically.
Yeah, so like literally 20 years into their career, they're like, well, we should probably start playing with a click. So they did it on their album Evisceration Plague. And I was listening to an interview of their drummer Paul Mazurkowitz, and he's like, next time you listen to Evisceration Plague, pay attention to the drums. And you'll notice there's literally no drum fills whatsoever. He doesn't do any like kind of like rolls around the kit or anything like that. It's just straight beats, and it's cool actually. But he's like, he was struggling so hard to just learn how to play to a click that he's just like, fuck it, I'm not going to do any drum fills because it's too hard. So it's an interesting album in that way.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying is maybe it would behoove you to play something a little more organic and just let loose instead of trying to be technical.
I'm not, no, I don't try to be technical, dude. I'm talking, it's hard for me just to do a simple beat, like program one. I mean,
What I'm getting at here is take ambient music, for example. It's actually a lot harder than people give it credit for. Anyone can hold down a key and record it for 15 minutes and call that a song. And it's obvious when people do that.
Mhm.
Some people don't think it's obvious, but it is. But if you're really going to do something good and creative, I don't remember if I told you this story, but there's a collection of music. It's like ritual music. It wasn't by proper bands. It was by people who made ritual music for their rituals.
Uh-huh.
And it was not music or bands or like groups. It was just like an individual or a couple of people who recorded what they were doing, like in a crypt in underground Italy. And another guy, Rob Graves, in Austria, and made instruments out of the human bones that he dug up out of the graves and recorded his album with those. This kind of stuff, like people who are really into their like dark magic. And they recorded what they did, limited edition, couple hundred copies back in the 80s.
Mhm.
I've stumbled across this music and I was just obsessed with it ever since. And like I actually just dropped like nearly $500 on a vinyl box set of all of this stuff too that just came out.
Robert Graves?
Robbing graves.
Robbing Graves. Oh,
In other words, they dug up graves, took out the human bones, and made instruments out of them, like a kalinga, which is a flute, or they made drums out of the skulls and put skins over the top of the head. Like the real deal. This is like darker than any black metal bullshit out there.
oh,
Um,
what's the band called? Or it's just
well,
ritual
the
music?
most popular one is Zero Comma, Kama, Zero Comma. That was the guy who dug up the graves. And that's whose label put out most of these artists, called Necrophile Records. Pretty obscure, like it was from the 80s. They only put out tapes. But in the 90s, they re-released CDs, which is when I got into it. And then they just put out a vinyl box set, which I bought. But what I was getting at is I tried so hard to sound like that when I was doing my own ambient music. And I also, because of how they recorded it in adverse conditions, because they do field recordings like in crypts or outside or in a graveyard or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured, well, they don't have a great recording, so I'm not going to have one either. I'm just going to half-ass it and record it doing this or whatever. You can have a click at the end of the song where you hit stop or just whatever the fuck. Who cares? So I did it, and I was trying to sound like that. And I've heard so many people over the years who know those bands try to sound like them, and they sound ridiculous because they're trying so hard to sound evil. But what they're missing is that
Mm-hmm.
those guys who do that music aren't evil, number one. And number two, they're not trying to sound or be evil. They're just doing ritual magic to get your mind into this chant. So they're doing chants mostly. But they use electronics like keyboards to kind of also get a background thing so your mind can grab onto it like that.
Yeah.
So it's dark ritual music. So you meditate to it, sort of, is the idea. It's long story short. But I was trying to do that stuff on my own ambient projects. And the more I did it, the more it sounded either totally ridiculous Or I would have stuff that sounded like space music every time. I'm like, what the fuck? Why does it sound like space music? Because I also love deep space, dark ambient, like, say,
Sure.
Lustmore or Legion or all these other bands. But when I stopped trying so hard to be like those artists, like Zero Comma,
Yeah.
I noticed that my music still had that space ambient sound, but it was taking on that Zero Comma sound on its own naturally. And it did sound pretty dark and ominous without me really trying to be that way. I kind of, yeah, I went for it, but I didn't. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So that's what I'm saying is maybe you need to let loose and just kind of fuck it all and just do what you just do something and it'll probably come naturally because maybe you're trying too hard.
Well,
Plus you're tech
yeah.
and you're into technicality and production and that's probably even worse for you because I'm not like that, but you are.
Well, I mean, that's the weird thing. It's like I'm into technicality, um, but not so much for my own original music, you know. Like there's a few things that I do that are maybe would be considered sort of tricky or technical, but I am actually kind of doing what you're suggesting, you know. Like I've kind of gotten to the point where I've like stopped trying to be like, okay, well you're not death metal, dude. You love death metal, you listen to it all the time, but you don't play it. Like for whatever reason, it doesn't. That's not what comes out of me. You know what I mean? It's more of this, like I said, it's more just like straight ahead hard rock.
You said
Sort
you
of.
like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Why don't you try something like that? Maybe it'll come out
That's
a
what I
little.
mean. Well, no, because that's what I mean. Like I've sort of just been like, okay, we'll just write what comes out of you naturally, and that's what comes out, and I'm okay with that. But so I when I say I guess like I'm struggling with technical aspects, it's more like technology and just musical theory aspects, meaning that if someone hands me a drum machine and says, okay, well, you got this song, just program some drums onto it. And I'll be like, I don't know how. Like, you're like, well, the song's in 4/4. Well, I'm like, okay, so you'll do boom, tick, boom, tick, boom. Okay, that's easy enough. And then you're like, well, then it
And
gets
that's
to
a
the
measure,
chorus.
right?
I don't know what I'm like, and that's the other thing. It's like, you know, how many
Well,
bars do I
there's
play? How many
four
measures is it?
things.
Is it 4 beats?
Something
One,
like that, I
two.
believe so. I think Alcohol Death taught me that. So
I so
I don't
like
know either. I don't know anything about music, but I can play grindcore and stuff. But I mean, I'm not technical enough to do anything beyond that, drum wise. But then again, maybe I am. I don't know. I've never really tried because I always, every time I get behind a kit, I'm like, yeah, scum. Like, you
yeah.
know, that was back then in the 90s. I haven't played forever. So
Okay. Okay. What is a measure in music? In music theory, a measure or bar. So I didn't know that. I didn't know a measure is also a bar. Because someone will be like, play 4 bars. Like, I don't know what a bar is. They're like, well, play 4 measures then. I'm like, I don't know how many bars are in a measure, or vice versa. But I guess a measure is a bar according to the internet. And it refers to a single unit of time featuring a specific number of beats played at a particular tempo. That doesn't help me. Okay, hold on a second. Bar, music, okay.
well,
In
think of it this
musical,
way. Think about American Woman by the Guess Who. Da 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 dun 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 da 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 dun 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 da da
is
da
it
da
okay?
da.
So the da 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 da
American
da da.
Woman.
That's 1 bar. American Woman, da 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 da. Gonna come my way. That's 2 bars. Da 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 da.
Well, there's a
So
part where they do like four, and then that's when the vocals come in. That's kind of how I'm guessing that's how everything goes. I don't know, but there are those who don't do that, I'm sure. But there's think of a simplistic band like Kiss. They probably do that. Their
okay,
music's all verse, chorus, solo, verse, chorus.
so the bar. So hold on. And in modern musical notation, the number of beats in each bar is specified at the beginning of the score by the time signature, such as 3/4. See, I'm already fucking lost. Okay, hold on. The top figure, which is the 3, indicates the number of beats per bar, while the bottom number indicates the note value of the beat, and I don't know what's going on. The beat has a quarter. What the fuck? Okay, hold on. Let me read that again. The top figure indicates the number of beats per bar. Okay, so that's 3 beats. While the bottom number indicates the note value of the beat. So 3, 4, that means there's 3 beats per bar. 1, 2, 3. And then the bottom is a 4, so that means it's a quarter note. Quarter note is 1E and a 2. Okay. 1E and a 2E and a 3. Okay. So the bottom is the bar. Wait. Is the bar. Huh. I don't know, dude.
He's getting it, ladies and germs. He's getting it.
I don't know what I'm doing, but that actually sort of made sense when I kind of worked it out in my head. But okay, so yeah, I still don't get it. But a bar, okay, I guess okay. So a bar is just when it repeats. So if there's 3 notes per bar, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I just did 2 bars right there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 3 bars. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then I still don't really. Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean.
Well, anyway, you're gonna work on that.
Yeah.
And maybe I will just get one of those electronic drum sets because I have a couple of one-man black metal projects I want to do. But you were saying you listen to ...
Oh, Resurrection.
And
I like it. It's good. It's kind of definitely it's sort of that kind of mid '90s, late '90s death metal that I like. I mean, that's the era of death metal I like because it's kind of like it's still a little bit raw, still a little bit new, but it's kind of starting to get technical. That's what I like about that era. It's they're pushing themselves, but there's still kind of a little bit of that almost innocence of just like we're just gonna play some crazy shit, But now they're starting to get a little more organized with it, a little more intentional with the riffs. What's weird about that, the Resurrection, it's like I can't tell if that's a concept album. Because have you listened to it recently?
if it's a what album?
Like a concept album?
No.
But did you notice, like, almost between every track, there's like this sort of narrative, like,
Yeah.
all right, my pretties,
Yeah,
we're gonna.
that was kind of dumb. I mean, that was just something I thought they probably just thought it was cool at the time. But
That's what I mean. I mean, it's like, dude, once again, it's '90. That's what I liked about death metal. They're just throwing shit at the wall because there's some kind of like, and it still has like a little bit of the roots in thrash, which is another reason why I kind of like the earlier death metal. You can hear kind of the artifacts of thrash in there, kind of the grooves. But I liked it. I know why you liked it because they did a cover of fucking War Machine on it.
well, that's not the only reason why. I think that album's actually pretty good. I mean, it's just good like mid-tempo stuff. But I also like the
Yeah.
vocals aren't like every other band out there.
Hmm.
The growls because it has like a different like livelihood to it, like a different vitality and different sound altogether.
No, he's got a good growl, really
It
good
does have
enunciation.
Yeah, it's good, and it does have like that thrashier feel, but they're still playing death metal, so it's like
Hmm.
mid-tempo, like double bass, and that's why
Yeah.
I like Monstrosity too, because Monstrosity
Yeah.
kind of sound too. See,
Dude,
that's
I
why
was
I
listening
was
to
thinking about.
Fatal.
I was listening to some of our old shows where we're talking about Cannibal Corpse, and like one of the reasons why I'm not so into them is because every song is just like a jugular attack with a sudden riff, then it goes into a fast song, and then there's a solo, then it riffs again, and then it's over. Every song, like on every album, pretty much that I've heard.
I don't know. You need to get. So okay. So here's and maybe this
But
is like once again, this is why I think I'm kind of lucky that I got into death metal when I did. Because okay, think about it, dude. Like I fully embraced death metal, and it was like 2007. I think actually, but closer to 2008 or 2009. So think about it. Death metal has been going for about 20 years by that point. And I jumped in on Cannibal Corpse's, basically their 11th album, right? Evisceration Plague. That's the real first death metal album I got. So I'm jumping like right in the middle of this, of everything. So I have no attachments to like I don't have any like sentimentality about it, which I think is kind of a lot of times where me and you butt heads is I think you have this sort of, you were there in the beginning, right? You saw it evolve from,
I'll say this. I think you have a point, and you made your own point. I made your point for you because of what I'm about to tell you in a little bit here. But also, I have a little bit of bitterness for a couple of reasons, which aren't personal, but they shouldn't be, but they kind of are. Is just like I told you, when I was doing my radio show early in the 90s, like 1991,
Right.
I was playing all this stuff on the air. Nobody knew what this shit was. People called me up and made fun of me and went, bar, in the phone and hung up and they were laughing. What is this? Sounds like you're fucking your dog and just shit like that.
Yeah.
Then, of course, like 2 years later, Cannibal Corpse came in concert and everybody was calling me, just kind of blowing me on the phone and telling me how great the show is.
Uh-huh.
And they wanted me to play all this stuff. And then,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I got a bad taste in my mouth from Cannibal Corpse in a way because that's all people wanted to hear. But I was
Because
playing
that
all this
was
European shit that I thought was so good, like Carcass, and they're like, "Fuck Carcass, Cannibal Corpse, Cannibal Corpse."
right.
But I do
So
stick by what I say is just like the style of Cannibal Corpse. There's a lot of just like kind of noodly solos and fretboard stuff, and Carcass does that too. But there's something different about theirs to me. It just sounds a little more accomplished, as does the whole package, lyrically and visually.
sure.
However, I think I've been like a little too, and I beat up Carcass for their Heartwork album, which was really extremely like technical, and they dropped the gore and the pathology altogether, and they only had one vocalist on that album. Well,
Uh-huh.
get this. I was
Yeah.
listening to that tonight while I was making my dinner, and
Uh-huh.
I thought, this really sounds like necroticism, a little faster, a little lighter, not too much,
Uh-huh.
but it's really not that bad of an album.
Oh, so yeah,
And I knew it wasn't that bad of an album. I was just being really obstinate because of all those years ago at my radio show, just with people fucking with me on the phone with Cannibal Corpse. And then I met Jeff Walker. We met Carcass. We had him at the radio station, interviewed him. He did a station promo for me.
yeah.
And I never used it because he was drunk as fuck because it didn't sound good. But I pissed him off that night by being like, "Oh yeah, you didn't play any of your old stuff. You fucking probably sold out." And I thought, what the fuck was I thinking saying that? I got to meet Jeff Walker, and that's what I fucking said. Of course he fucking hated me. It's like, and he probably gets that from a lot of people too. And then I just
Sure.
listened to that tonight, Heartwork. I'm like, it's not like my favorite album. I'm probably not gonna buy it
Yeah.
again, but I'm like, I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it. It wasn't that bad. It was pretty decent. It's like necroticism. So if you can handle necroticism, you should be able to handle Heartwork.
Yeah,
Swan
and
might be a different story, though.
I'd give it a shot. I mean, it's to me like Carcass is what's interesting about them is there a band that like you really do hear their progression with every album. Like you can hear them literally evolving right before your eyes. And that I think is kind of interesting about them.
Right before your ears.
Before your ears, exactly.
Well, that's true
Because
because their second record, Symphonies of Sickness, you like that one, but it's like still a little death metal,
yeah,
like rooted in the grindcore sound. And I know their first album was just a sloppy mess of grindcore, which I like that album, but not many
yeah.
people do that like the other stuff.
And I'd probably like that album if it didn't have that audio issue, honestly.
Well, you know why that was. Producers go as
Yes.
copy on it and also didn't really know that kind of music, which is often the problem with a lot of those old bands is they get into fights. And this is a problem Celtic Frost and Creator and Sodom all used to have back in the days, is they'd be with producers in the studio who were like, no, why do you sound like that? And
Right.
that's my argument about Morrisound is I kind of think they're like, why do you have all that distortion? Why don't you have kick pads on your drums? And like, that's what we play. And that's why I get, annoyed
But
because
it's which is weird though because that's the same reason that Morris Sound is celebrated is because they're like,
well, it is.
we need to be able to hear everything. You know what I
But
mean?
that's my point. It's not that you can't hear everything, but it's also Americans are more obsessed, I think, with technicality and especially solos, because they're more influenced by bands like Slayer, Deicide, Cannibal Corpse, versus your average European band who may or may not like those, but they're a little more rooted in like the heavier, like the beginnings of punk and grindcore, which is how grindcore started, which is how death metal started. So, and that's where I'm coming from, even though I live here.
Yeah.
And that's Carcass is the band who actually shows you what I'm saying through their progression of sound. They start out as a grindcore band. They came from Napalm Death and Electro Hippies, who are kind of punk bands, basically.
Uh-huh.
Then they get into their second record, Symphonies of Sickness, which is pure death metal, but it still has a little bit of that grindcore feel. Then Necroticism after that, it's all just like straight up thrashy, speedy death metal and more technical.
Yeah, yeah.
So Heartwork, when it came out, they had like the peace sign on the cover. It was like a light piece of art from H.R. Giger, which is also strange because everything H.R. Giger does is dark and has skulls and it's black. And here's this happy peace sign thing with the hands going, hey, you know, and
yeah, but it was
like,
skeleton hands.
You know,
dude. I
so
thought it was still kind of a dark, kind of eerie.
Well, the original, there's a series of sculptures he did like those, and the
there
rest
was blood dripping down one of them, I think.
What's that?
Right? There was blood dripping down like one
Yeah,
version
one of them
it.
had dripping blood, and like it was black, and like that one's the one they chose for that record. It's like the lightest, happiest one. Yeah. And then their lyrics had changed, and only Jeff is doing vocals on that. And then I met them on that tour, and we kind of butted heads because I was kind of, you know, oh, you sold out.
And, you were young.
Well, I didn't say they sold out, but I just gave him shit for not playing anything from the first two albums. Like, dude, come on, man. Carcass, I finally get to see Carcass. He only played shit from Heartwork. Come on. And he's like, oh, we can't play that shit the rest of our life. And I was thinking about that today. Like, I was thinking about prepping for this show, and I thought, you know, some of these old bands, like thrash bands, did the same thing, and that's what Carcass did, is they started out with dark and brutal. And like, what do you expect? You know, you can't expect Possessed to sing. I mean, their name is Possessed, but I mean, Creator, Sodom, all those bands sang about Satan and death and all of that. And that's what I like the best.
Yeah.
But they go on. They progress musically. They progress lyrically into more socio-political stuff. But I'm thinking, well, you know, I mean, 5 albums later, they can't still be singing about Satan's curse and all that kind of shit. I mean, how far?
But then, on the flip side, you could actually kind of give it up to Cannibal Corpse for literally never changing like their imagery and lyrical content, you know.
And that's true, but like that's the thing is like musically, I just don't get into them. That's the thing. But then you take a band like Decapitated, and I fucking love Decapitated. But what's the difference? What am I hearing that maybe you're not, or are you hearing it?
Decapitated, I think, is a little more. They're not as chaotic sounding as.
They're not. They have a European vibe. It's still there to me. Am I crazy, or are you hearing that?
No, I mean, not only European. I think there's a distinctly like Polish vibe to some of those, like Polish death metal bands. They are Polish.
I'm not big into Polish death metal, like Imperator, Invader, all that stuff. I'm not really big in it.
But there is kind of like it's actually, believe it or not, it's almost like a cleaner, at least in my experience. Like the Polish death metal has a little more of like a cutting riffs.
It does. That it does.
Almost a little more. I don't even want to say like robotic, but they, especially Decapitated though. I mean, those guys are just like tight and punchy.
They are super tight, super technical, and like you pointed out, once in a while I'll totally go for that shit, like Evil Conscience on the label on Slaughterhouse Records. Like,
yeah.
I can't not notice, but the thing is when I don't know, it's
almost like
wild. Those guys are from India, Evil Conscience, but Malevolent Creation have been doing that forever, but I just won't bite on them. I'm like, you know.
Believe it or not, I'd say Monstrosity is closer to like a Polish sound, like. Once again, just because it's this clean, executed sort of.
That's true, and I think you got a good point there, because also Decapitated has a lot of more mid-tempo stuff, and I think, again, that's maybe what it is, because Cannibal, like I said, they just go for the jugular every song, every album. Like, it's a riff, boom, you're in the song, and boom, then it's over. It's like,
well, that, believe it or not, okay, so that's why maybe, like, I mean, look, dude, you know me, dude, I don't like being told what to listen to, so I'm not going to tell you to listen to anything. But I think if you maybe started where I started with Cannibal Corpse, like almost pretend you're starting over, and throw on like Evisceration Plague, that's when they started getting groovy. Like Well, I mean,
Well, I started with the first album. It's
right.
okay, but then the second one, Butchered at Birth, I thought wasn't so bad because it had a darker, like a heavier, muddier sound. Some of the songs seemed like they were a little bit slowed down a little bit, and I thought that's not a bad record. I'm not my favorite thing, but I played it on the radio for my listeners for a couple of years. But then after like the whole Tomb of the Mutilated came out, I really hated the riffs and stuff in that album, especially Hammer Smash Face, and everybody wanted to hear that. That's
Because
when
of
I
Ace Ventura, though. I mean, well, and I actually understand that. Sometimes there's like if a culture starts to pop up around certain bands, you know what I mean? Well, I mean, you start to associate the music with certain personality types,
Well,
and
that's true.
that's another luxury I have is once again it's like I got into it with like no I had no pretenses about it. So like I didn't know, I didn't know like the fan base necessarily. I didn't know like what kind of like what was going on around it, or what other opinions were. It's just like, okay, here I go. I'm going to buy death metal, and I bought it, and luckily, like it hasn't been colored, but like they start, they've, and I think they're actually getting older. I mean, dude, they're all in their like late 50s now, so they're slowing down a little bit. So, and you can hear it in their albums. But that's what I liked about Cannibal is that like there will be those like usually almost most of their songs are just breakneck, but it always seems like no matter what, like almost 90% of their songs has like this sort of break in the speed where they just do this sort of like pummeling riff, like they slow it down, they back off just a little bit, like to give you a breath, and then they'll pick it back up. And I like that because there's that contrast in almost every one of their songs, especially in their later era, from like from like the Bleeding on, you know. Bleeding was the last song with Chris Barnes, or the last album with Chris Barnes.
Well, another thing about American Death Metal, in particular Corpse versus, say, Decapitated again, is I don't like the guitar stuff because they're not necessarily tuned down as much as I like them to be, and they do a lot of like just the noodling and the what would you call it, arpeggios or fretboard, just like wee like that kind of stuff. It's just like
I don't know, dude.
solo-y riffs and stuff, the flowery riffs, and like Decapitated kind of does that, but it sounds different. Like their guitars sound like razors or something. It's totally a different thing to me.
It's funny because it's almost like when you say that, it's like, are we talking about Cannibal? Like, is there another Cannibal Corpse I don't know about that does these wittily, like, kind of weird arpeggio solos or something?
Well, I'm talking about their guitar style because it's always just
they
and solo-y, and I don't like that about death metal. Never did. Even in thrash, I hated it in thrash too. And American thrash is like that. European,
I mean.
not so much.
Like to me, their solos, like I don't. Most like, let's face it, dude. Death metal solos, like guitar solos in death metal, are pretty much bullshit. Okay, I have no problem saying that.
Except for Carcass.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah.
I will say this: I'm not a guitar guy, but Bill Steer is like a really good. If you listen to Symphonies of Sickness, there's some really cool solos on there, just unique.
He's like the Gary Moore of death metal. He's like bluesy and melodic and
the Gary Moore of death metal. That's pretty funny.
Whereas, Slayer or like Cannibal Corpse does like kind of like Slayer solos, where it's just kind of like more like noisy, which is fine because whatever, it
and
doesn't.
That's what I'm saying is I think American death metal and Corpse gets their soloing style from Slayer because that's what it sounds like, is the Kerry King that like all the time. And
yeah.
So I mean,
that's actually, that's one of the compromises that I kind of just look past, like because one, it's like whatever. The guitar solo is like 10 seconds of the song, so I don't give a shit. They're not doing it the whole time. But they tune.
Well, it's the riffing too, though. That's what I'm saying. It's the riffing.
Really? Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, and that's where I'm like, maybe we're listening to a different band or different.
Well, okay, let's table Cannibal Corpse for a minute, and let's say here's another band like, say, Deeds of Flesh or that kind of stuff. Same thing. Lots of like solos and fretboard, just like jumping around, like fingery, like guitar stuff. Compare that and Tomb. Like, what's the difference?
Well, it's a big difference between them
Carnage
and Tomb.
or somebody.
Well, yeah, but I mean, once again, I think this is sort of the beauty of death metal is like, okay, so you have this genre, death metal, and within that genre, you can have so much like variations of it. And that's you know kind of the beauty of the whole thing. But I think honestly, like I'm trying to think of like a Cannibal Corpse song. Like I wouldn't make you listen to the whole album, but maybe one or two songs.
What was Chris Barnes' last album with them? Was it Tomb of the Mutilated?
No, it was The Bleeding.
And that was the one after Tomb of the Mutilated, right?
It was after. Yes, it was.
And then after that was Vile, and that was the first Corpse Grinder.
Yes, Vile. And
so I've heard Vile like hundreds of times because that's about the time Disordered was, I guess, like with Mike in the band, and like he was super into that record, and like I heard it like a billion times. I've seen Cannibal Corpse live so many times because all my friends here liked him, and usually they come with bands I wanted to see. Probably the strangest lineup of Cannibal Corpse I've ever seen was Angel Corpse, like black metal band, like total right-wing black metal band opening for them, and then opening for them, System of a Down, when they were nobody.
So it was System of a Down, Angel Corpse, and Cannibal Corpse?
At the Holy Cow, now known as the Urban Lounge. You could just walk right up to them and push them, you know? It's like, that's how close they were. I'm like, and in System of a Down, we're just sitting at the bar with all the rest of us watching the rest of the show. I'm like, who are these guys? Why are they on this tour? They're not even metal. Like, what is this? And then like a year later, that album came out and they got huge.
I never got into them, man. I gotta know.
Like, there were a lot of punks there to see them. That was the thing. There was a lot of punks there, a lot of Middle Eastern type. Where are those guys from?
Turkey.
Yeah, there was a definite non-white contingent as well as a punk contingent at that show, which is kind of funny because Angel Corpse is pretty right-wing, or at least the vocalist is. I don't know about back then, but he's pretty outspoken. And then Cannibal Corpse, and I forget what tour that was. That was I don't fucking know. Maybe it was Vile. I don't remember.
And Vile, believe it or not, so Vile is like almost like that's when they started, I think, you know, going, okay, we're technical, we're going to push the technicality. So Vile is a pretty speedy little album. And then after Vile, I think, is Bloodthirst. And then there's
I don't remember. I've seen them live so many times, but I don't remember what tours, but it had to be, yeah, it was Corpse Grinder. Like I seen Macabre open for Cannibal Corpse, Sinister and Cynic opening for Cannibal Corpse. I don't remember who the other band was they opened for. They played at the Sanctuary, the goth club.
Oh, yeah.
And then the power kept going out during the only even quasi-religious song they have, Vomit the Soul, If You Believe in a Soul. They played that song a couple of times and the power kept going out.
Really?
Then they play another song and it was fine. But they go, okay, let's try Vomit the Soul again. So they did it, power went out. And you got to remember, Sanctuary, the goth club, was a church. It was an old abandoned Mormon church, which is kind of crazy. And Chris Barnes, I remember on stage, was like, whoa, that's creepy, dude. We're an abandoned church and we can't play Vomit the Soul.
See?
So they gave up on it and just didn't play it. And they tried it 3 times. And I remember somebody in the audience said, how about Vomit the Soul a 4th time? And just didn't happen. That was just a funny memory. But I don't remember who opened for them then. But I've seen so many bands with Cannibal Corpse.
Oh yeah, well, and that's once again like.
And actually, Hypocrisy. That's another one. They opened up. Hypocrisy opened for Cannibal Corpse. That's the last time.
That's what I was going to say. Another thing, like, I mean, love them or hate them, Cannibal Corpse would always, to this day, they always like would bring good bands out with them, like.
They're like Kiss of the death metal scene because they bring out all these bands that get huge. Like Kiss brought out AC/DC, Van Halen, Priest, Maiden, Rush, Winger, Slaughter, Warrant.
Right.
Ted Nugent, Skid Row.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is a good thing, you know. Like, and they even say it's like, dude, we want to bring out bands that we like that are good, that aren't getting the recognition, you know, that maybe they should, that they can, you know, like one of the, there's a band that opened when I saw Cannibal Corpse a few years ago. Have you heard of Aeon?
Yes. Aren't they super like Origin, like crazy light speed death metal?
No, no, man. They're just good, solid. I mean, they're I think they're Swedish, but they're Swedish that play a little bit more of a, I guess you could call it American style death metal, but just
Yeah, they're
solid meat and
kind of
potatoes death
comparable to
metal.
Origin, or at least lyrically
No,
anyway.
no, no, they're satanic lyrically, total satanic. Kind of like that semi-technical, like not over the top technical, but tricky little riffs here and there, but memorable. Like I dig them a lot, but they're a band that I kind of discovered through Cannibal Corpse, watching them open up, and I was like, these guys are fucking bad. So, Cannibal Corpse just always does that. They take good bands out with them.
Well,
But okay, so I'm gonna just I would say listen to either these songs off of Visceration Plague. That would be the album. Like I just say, pretend you're starting where I did, and listen to the title track, or Priests of Sodom, or Skewered from Ear to Eye.
I tend to view Cannibal Corpse as Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th movies. It's like you like the first three, and after that, they're just like an exercise and just the same shit over and over. Am
Really?
I giving them the short end of the stick there?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I haven't listened to anything they've done since Vile, and that's probably, that's like the last I've heard, other than what they played live. But I mean, live, it all sounds the same live too, if you don't know them. But
Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, if you don't know a death metal band,
well, I mean, I know
almost,
some of their stuff, like their early shit, but like if all their newer
yeah,
stuff, I just don't get it. I don't know it like very well at all. And then
yeah,
Corpse are singing it, so it's kind of different. But
yeah,
but like I said, I've met those guys. They're all cool guys. I have nothing
super
against them
cool.
as people or really as a band per se. But like, and Corpse Grind is a super nice guy.
Oh, they're all
Uh,
cool, yeah.
so yeah, it's just again, maybe I'm giving. I know I'm not going to be that into it. I'll check it out. But I'm thinking I got
Just
to go back in time and think maybe I've been just like holding on to just
no,
fitness
you
from my
don't even
radio show days, And
pretend. I mean, in some ways, like those first, 5 albums are almost like a different band to me. I still like it, but to me, like I mean, I all I can say is like my favorite is Visceration Plague. That album.
now let me ask you this: do you like 6 Feet Under?
No, not really. I don't. Chris Barnes' vocals have gotten a little.
Have you heard the cover 6 Feet Under did of Grinder, one of your favorite Judas Priest songs?
Uh-uh.
It's really bad.
Yeah, and I don't. It's one of those things like I don't want to not like it, and I actually
No,
like
it's
some of
it's
like
not very good. It's kind of like the super joint ritual of Cannibal Corpse. It's like just fucking
right.
down, It's like this total trashy lowbrow. In fact, don't they have a
Yeah,
band too called Lowbrow, like him or like some of the other guys in 6 Feet Under anyway? Or do you even know?
I don't even know
I
because
think they have a band called Lowbrow too. It's just more this like this silly stoner death metal and
yeah, and it sucks because I actually I don't want to not like it. Like, and there's some good, some solid riffs or whatever, and it's like to me like I'm kind of happy that seeing success with it in a way. Like I don't want to not, but it doesn't. I don't like his voice.
well,
To be
6 Feet
honest.
Under was I think Alan West from Obituary, Terry Butler, who was at Massacre and Death for a large part of Death's career earlier before
Yeah,
the
yeah.
super technical stuff, and then Chris Barnes. I can't remember who else was in it. Like there's the drummer. Maybe it was the drummer from the Death Leprosy. I don't know, but yeah,
Leprosy.
not my cup of tea. And even Cannibal Corpse fans that I knew that were rabid Corpse fans were like, "This sucks."
Yeah, it fell a little. It falls a little short for me, and I hate to say it,
Plus,
because
everything was
because
about
I
weed,
like.
and it just they lost their death metal. It
Yeah.
was just like slow music about weed.
No, he still does gore lyrics. It's just like,
Well, there
but
was some of that, but a lot of it was just the weed. It was all about weed, weed, weed. I was like, fuck, dude.
yeah, well, he loves his weed. But it's not even, because once again, like lyrically, I don't give a fuck. Like I read, I think their lyrics are pretty dumb. Cannibal Corpse lyrics. Like you
Well,
read
yeah,
it,
it's ridiculous.
and it's like what it's like just a disturbed child
That's what we
because
talked about a couple of shows ago. It was Carcass. I was saying, how can you compare the forensic lyrics of Carcass that are also disguised vegetarian vegan lyrics? Compare that to Cannibal Corpse's super lowbrow, just like
oh
tunneling through
yeah,
nuts. It's enough to drive you nuts. I'm like, okay,
well yeah. So I mean, the you don't compare them. That's the thing. I'm not comparing them at all.
well, that's what
And
I
that's
used to do on my radio show all the time. So I'd be like, oh, come on, man, really? And Deicide with
yeah.
Stupid Angel, same thing. I was like, come on.
No, dude, and that's to me like once again it's another compromise. I can't expect every death metal band to write like fucking Neil Peart lyrics, you know what I mean? Like it's death metal. So like and to me like death metal, like the vocals in death metal are really the way I hear them is almost like another instrument, right? It's an ambient thing that goes throughout it, you know. So as far as what they're singing about, like I there's a few death metal bands where I really think the lyrics are pretty well written and everything. Um, Cynic is probably the one that I like the most because it's this sort of cosmic, spiritual, weird, almost new agey sort of lyrics. But I don't expect like any kind of real, I don't know, um, you know, literary kind of poetic. I like Morbid Angel is another one. Like both Steve Tucker and David Vincent write incredibly cool lyrics. You know, so I think good lyrics in death metal is a rare kind of thing. So it's one of those things I usually just kind of dismiss. You know, and I'm like, well, does he have a cool growl? Cool. It sits well with the guitars, fine. But it becomes another instrument to me, the vocals, and more of just part of that sonic soundscape. So it doesn't matter if they're singing about, gore or Satan or whatever. It's like, is it sitting in the mix well? Is the phrasing decent? Cool. So it is one of the compromises I make with death metal for sure.
According to BNR Metal Pages, Cannibal Corpse has not had a record out since 2017. Did they break up?
No, dude, they just put one out in 2021, I think. Violence Unimagined. It's excellent. Eric Rutan is now their guitar player because they had the issues with Pat O'Brien. But Pat O'Brien was just cool. You kind of heard about him, right? Like he kind of snapped.
Yeah,
And
we touched on that briefly. He was selling weapons. I guess if I remember,
well,
his house caught on fire and it blew up like a
well,
military bunker because he had so much ammo in there or something like that. I don't
yeah. I
remember.
mean, he loved guns and everything. That's fine, whatever. He's kind of like the Ted Nugent of death metal. He's a hunter and just had all these firearms. But I think it wasn't the fact that he had guns. He had like a mental, just like a breakdown almost, and kind of like broke into the neighbor's house and was talking about the rapture coming. It is really it's kind of heartbreaking when I think about it, you know.
Yeah, I hate when people talk religion. I just fucking hate it. Nothing makes me feel worse than when people like reveal that they're like
I
crazy
don't,
like that.
I don't, I don't think he's religious. Like I
Well,
said,
if you're
he was
talking
having a
about Judgment Day and the rapture and all that shit, then
right. Okay, but he's having a psychotic episode. You know what I mean? It could be drug induced or whatever. But whatever it is, he's like he wasn't himself, right? So
so
you
what happened
know,
to him? Is he still in jail or
no,
mental?
no. Okay, so he was in jail for a little while. He's probably on probation, but um, and he was under suicide watch. Like I said, it's actually really heartbreaking. I mean, he's a cool dude. Like you just don't want to see that happen to anybody, and it kind of pissed me off that a bunch of like, you know, the metal community was like shitting on him and everything, like, because they're a bunch of, they kind of got all woke, so they hate, anybody who's into guns and all that shit. But he's
I mean, who did that really? Just like
huh?
who did that? Who shat upon him? Like just
Oh, like, you're like those like Metal Injection, metalsucks.com, those
Oh, fuck those
fucking,
guys. They're not even real magazines, let alone
yeah.
and fuck them.
But like I said, I'm such a fan that like anything like, like I got to admit, so I'm biased towards that band, so
See
like
this
I tend
again,
to
I'm
be
gonna make this comparison. I know you
got to
hate it.
circle. I've got to circle the wagons around the corpse, boys.
Well, I gotta give you this comparison again. I know you hate it, but wrestling is the same way as you have shock jock people who do journalism or even podcast
Hmm.
that will do the same shit with wrestling. They'll say, "Oh, this guy did this or he did this back when he was 15," and like and then everybody's supposed to hate
Yeah.
him. Fuck what you did a couple of years ago. Everybody does and says dumb shit. Get over it. You can't destroy somebody's life for eternity just because they said the
Right.
N word once in their life or because they tried to get laid on a date, and like it's
No, yeah,
fuck.
and I don't think anybody's beyond redemption, to be honest with you. There's a few things
I'm not
that
saying you should forgive like a Nazi or something, but at the same time, you can't give people shit just because they made an off-color joke or may try to
no.
make a floundering sexual advance or something. I mean,
I think you can forgive a reformed, like, I mean, not a literal Nazi, like not someone from 1940s Germany, like, no, okay, but yeah, if you put someone in a
I have friends, and
concent-
this is a
but
huge
like a
topic.
reform, like someone who was like in their younger days, like gotten just some mixed up with some bad people and bad influences, and they've kind of rehabilitated from it, and they're like, well, fuck, I got this swastika tattoo shit, sorry, I'm not like, that's what I mean. Like nobody's like, if you pretty much renounced that past, then and you haven't like committed a murder or something, like, I mean, if you lynch somebody, fucking you should rot in hell the rest of your life. But yeah, if
Well,
you got mixed up in
that
that,
kind of shit's crazy, but most of that doesn't happen in black metal. There are those who are like talking about that kind of stuff, and there are certain most of those bands I'm not into because they're all kind of the same thing. Like, let's say
yeah,
for black metal, it's like the guys with the ski mask and the guns and shit. It's like one step away from just a swastika in their album. I'm like, well, why don't you just fucking do it? I mean, it's pretty obvious what you think, but
yeah,
that kind of shit's not black metal to me. But they kind of masquerade as black metal. And one of my kids tonight at work, like a teenager kid, we were talking about rap, and he asked me about black metal. He goes, "Are all black metal racist?" I'm like, "Why would you ask me that? Like, is it really that bad that even kids who know nothing about metal, who listen to hip hop and shit, like, they think it's the truck of racism? Because it's not. I mean, I know Burzum. We have Burzum to thank for that, and we've talked about Burzum.
I think a lot of times this whole Nazi talk is like over. It's like exaggerated. Like I don't think it's the
Well, it
problem
is.
that a
That's
lot of
what
people
happened in
think.
the black metal scene. Is like they
But
realized
Burzum,
Satanism wasn't toxic and evil, so they tried to do something that was really that bad. And they picked Nazism, which a lot of the bands dropped, and now like some are still carrying it on, or at least they did.
I mean, I don't think you're, like I think it's fine, like to still like his music, but I think he was fucking serious about it, dude. The
Well,
guy was
that's
the guy was writing like 10-page essays on white nationalism from prison. Like that's not someone who's just like, oh,
well, I mean,
say some shit to get under skin. I mean, he's really
that's
like
what it was at
exploring.
the beginning, but I don't know. Like, I don't follow him now. I don't know what he does or says, but I mean, I still like those albums from back then because I was already listening to him
I think
before
he
any of that
just
shit
lives
ever
in the
came up.
forest. I think he just lives in the forests of Norway now. Like
No,
he's like,
he lives in France.
pardon? He lives in
He's in
France?
France, I believe.
Oh,
But I
that's
don't
weird.
know what he thinks. But this is my point: is how far do you go with putting someone on trial? What do you do? Are you allowed to like their music, or if he's an asshole, or do you
No,
not?
you're totally allowed to. Like it's
But
okay.
that's
Like
not the case these days because if you even say
oh yeah,
Birds on Facebook, your fucking profile is taken down at least temporarily.
oh yeah, yeah. No, and
So
and
I
that's
mean,
bullshit. Sorry,
what do you do?
that's
I mean, there's other bands too, and that's what I'm saying is like there's like Pat O'Brien. Like, is he ever going to be able to play in a band again? Can he get a job
yes.
there again?
That's
Because
I'm getting.
everybody's canceling him. I'm like,
We'll check this out. Okay, so Pat O'Brien has been playing in Exhorder.
are they back?
Yeah, 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 man. He's and like to me, in a weird way, like if it wasn't Cannibal Corpse, like because I think Pat O'Brien is perfect for Cannibal Corpse, and I wouldn't be surprised give it a couple of years, you know, that he'll be back in Corpse. So I'm going to make that prediction right now that Pat O'Brien will rejoin Cannibal Corpse, because he is like he's a great fit. So is Eric Rutan, but Rutan is I think Rutan is actually going to go on to bigger and better things. That guy's like the Tony Robbins of fucking death metal. He's such a
yeah, Eric Tan's always
but yeah, it's so cool to see Pat O'Brien like playing live. It was like within the last few weeks, like he's been. I think Exhorder is overseas right now, and I don't think Pat O'Brien can.
Well, here's one
travel,
of the
but he's the perfect fit for Exhorder. That really technical groove thrash, man. I'd love to see
Here's
them.
one of the things that I want to talk about black metal one time on the show, and I wanted you to watch Lords of Chaos, the movie.
I discovered a black metal band that's pretty interesting.
Well, hold on to that.
I'll hold on to it.
Hold on to that thought. But I wanted you to watch the movie because there's a few key elements in there that paint the picture of what really happened more so than the book does. The book, Lords of Chaos, is very one-sided in favor of Burzum.
In favor?
Is dead. He can't defend himself, and people are talking shit about him. It's like I used to write to him and attempted to trade CDs anyway. He was busy getting killed, so I never quite got around to it. But there's a part in the movie where Count Grishnak, Burzum, is interviewed by the newspaper where he kind of spills his guts and like kind of just points the cops to everybody and gets everybody busted. But in that meeting, he's showing a swastika flag and he's showing like pagan stuff, or what was it, like Odinism and then Satanism. Mm-hmm. The guy's like, okay, how do you have all of these? You believe all of these? And that was always my thought back in the day about Burzum. That's why I always thought he was full of shit and he didn't mean what he was saying. But I don't know.
He's just throwing everything out there, like.
Well, that's how it was back then, and I haven't followed him since, so I don't know what he's doing now. Maybe he is. I'm not a racist. I'm not a Nazi. I don't support any of that. But good black metal is good black metal, you know. Then there's some other shit that the known Nazi bands, or at least people who you think are sympathizers, are doing. It's really not that good at all. But that's the point. It's not black metal. It's just people trying to that scene because they think it's a hate scene, and it's not really. But it is. It's hatred about religion and all of that, and people in general, like total misanthropy, not like one group, you know.
Yeah, and believe it or not, maybe that's why I have trouble getting into black metal. It's like, I'll admit,
don't get into black metal because of that. Even Earache Records, like they told you last time, they missed the boat on black metal because of their meeting with Burzum went sour. Like a lot of bands grow up, but there's still bands doing that shit. But what was the band you found out that you liked?
It's a weird name, and I think they're from Canada. It's called Thantifaxith.
What?
Thantifaxith. THANTIFAXATH. It's a really weird name. But really kind of man, really out there stuff. But I'm kind of mesmerized by it. Yeah, I mean, bleak, super bleak. Maybe, you know, once again, it's like I don't think I can listen to it very long, but this stuff is pretty captivating to me. But black metal, maybe that's, like I said, what it is like for my psychology, you know, psychological makeup profile. Like I can't really immerse myself in just bleak. Like death metal is dark, right? It's dark, it's aggressive, it's evil, it's violent. You know, it's in its way like kind of misanthropic and everything. But there's something just like, and this is, I think, intentional with death metal or with black metal, and it's
absolutely intentional. That's the point of black metal. Bleak, depressing. Bleak. That's why I like it.
Right.
That's why Burzum stuff is so melancholy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get it, and like it is brilliant in a way, but I think just mentally, like I said, I just think my psychological profile doesn't sit well with it for very long.
Well,
But I
here's
do.
the
I mean,
thing.
it's really interesting. Like I said, I'll throw on like like I said, my kind of go-to for black metal is Deathspell Omega, and it's just so empty and cold and bleak and
Not all black metal is that caliber of black metal. Like death metal, there are many variations. There's
sure.
technical, there's atmospheric, there's industrial, there's bleak, and that's why you need to listen to the band The Abyss, which is Peter of Hypocrisy's black metal band, because it's actually,
Mhm.
for lack of a better term, it's a little more uplifting, shall we say. And they actually said that in an interview once, that they didn't like their first album because it had like effects and it was kind of more chipper. I can't remember what they actually said, but they were like kind of down on it because it was so like musical. And I think you would like that. I believe I sent you
Well,
that, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I
well,
didn't.
here's the thing though, and once again, and this is something I think the reason I'm kind of compelled by extreme metal in the first place is that I think a lot of times, like, it's kind of that cliche that, music is therapeutic. And I think a lot of these black metal bands, and death metal and that kind of, they play this music because it's kind of their catharsis for whatever, whatever like is
Well, there are
weighs on
a lot of
them.
bands like that. There's
Yeah, well, it's got to be because like I don't know if maybe it's not so much with black metal, but like I said, you meet a death metal guy, and they couldn't be nicer to you. They couldn't actually be more like seemingly like well adjusted too. Like, wow, these guys kind of. It's almost like they figured it out. They figured out how to deal with the stress of life by just channeling it into just the most violent, hateful music they could possibly come up with, and in a way that they leave all that pain and on the stage, and then they're helping their mom with the groceries, that
So I
kind of thing.
think you need to listen to Dark Throne, because Dark Throne's like the Cannibal Corpse of the black metal scene. They're kind of funny,
Oh,
joker,
oh
happy-go
yeah.
guys, and they put out
I,
albums all the time. And
sure.
I'm not into much of their stuff anymore either. But
Yeah,
there's other bands like
Fendrick. Yeah,
Satyricon. You would love Satyricon's newer stuff. I'm pretty sure. It's not all like melancholy, depressing. There's some that's just like straightforward good music, like Satyricon's newer stuff. A lot of people don't like it because it's like more like black and roll, like rock and roll black.
sure.
But yeah, I think you
Well,
would really like it. So that
well,
The
shit,
Abyss,
dude. Like, or even Immortal. Like you can't listen to
I'm
you
pretty
listen
sure
to
that's your speed for black metal, is Immortal,
yeah,
Satyricon. So that's all the classic old stuff like Emperor, Mayhem. And those guys started out just liking death metal. They were in death metal bands, but they, of course, grew up on thrash and heavy metal like we all did.
yeah,
But they were
yeah,
in death metal bands, like a lot of those guys, like Immortal and Burzum, like Count Grishnak and Burzum were in a death metal band together called Old Funeral.
yeah.
And some of the Emperor guys, they had a band called Thou Shalt Suffer before they had Emperor. That was death metal. Dark Throne was death metal when they started.
Yeah.
Mayhem were thrash. They were covering Venom. That was it. Then all of a sudden they got into black metal, but he got into it because of the Greek bands, Verathron, Necromantia, and Rotting Christ. And those are the guys who really started black metal, and they don't really get credit for it. Mayhem does.
Oh, really?
So, how did we get on this? I can't remember, but there are a few other bands you should check out. Like there's a band called Bethlehem that aren't black metal really, but they.
Are there any Christian black? I think there's some Christian black metal bands.
There's one Christian black metal band. It's the guys from Mortification. I can't remember what they call it, but that's like an oxymoron. You can't have a Christian metal
Why not?
with
Sure you can.
emphasis on the moron.
I was actually listening one of my favorite. I don't even know if you'd call them like technical death or thrash band or even get a little more. I don't know. They get some weird territories. Have you heard of Extol?
Extol.
Yeah, Extol.
I've heard of them. I believe one of their CDs came to the radio station years ago when I worked there, and it was just like kind of average, just kind of death metal, wasn't it?
Whoa, no, It wasn't Extol then.
Maybe I'm thinking, no, I know the band you mean. It was like more like Doomy, perhaps, or I can't remember. I know the name.
No, I'd call them like technical death thrash, maybe. I don't know. I think they're incredible. Like, I was just listening to some of them today, and I was just like, holy shit, I forgot how good this was. That's another one. But they're Christian, but it's some of the best, like, sort of semi-technical. I mean, I'm afraid to even like suggest that when I say technical, I don't want you to get turned off on it, because these guys are like technical but understandable, if that makes sense. And that's what I like. Like, I like technical that's not like out so technical that it's like I don't know what's going on, where it's confusing.
Well, there's plenty of technical black metal. In fact, you should check out Winterlore that are on Slaughterhouse Record. Here's the funny thing too, is I was going to bring this up to you, is speaking of Winterlore, this was a topic I can't remember. I think we touched on it previously somewhere, but like it was about bands who were kind of not so great.
We
But
touch
one
on so
person
many
joins the
goddamn
band.
topics.
What's that?
We touch on so many topics.
We talked about this, but like one person joins the band and suddenly the band's a different band, and then when they leave, the band either goes back to shit or they stay good.
I can't recall. Like, give me an example of a band that maybe has done that.
Well, we hit on this, and that's why, because I said Winterlore that's my example is Winterlore. When they started out, when they worked at my CD shop, they were like 15-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And they were just doing this noisy, just really noisy, raw, just like really bad black metal, and they were trying really hard to be Darkthrone and Mayhem. And for what it was good. It was just raw, underproduced, just fucking around in the rehearsal room.
Okay.
But when they did their first album, they were joined on guitar by Jake Rogers, who is now the singer of Visigoth.
Yeah, that guy's a fucking great singer.
And on their second record, Jake produced it. But on the first record, Jake actually played guitar, and he had been in the band for a while. And I noticed that they improved vastly musically. And their first album, Four Swords Against the Pious, I released that for them, and it was actually a really good album. I was like, wow, these guys are good. What happened, man? Because I remember hearing that demo when they worked from the Abyss, my shop, and it was just like noisy, just crap. And
So
all of a sudden, they're heralded as a very European-sounding 90s style European black metal, which they do sound like. And in their second record they put out, which was the self-titled Winterlore, I put that one out. Jake doesn't play on that, but he produced it. It's pretty good. I have not heard their third one. They released it on their own on Bandcamp.
Did Jake have anything to do with the third one?
I don't think so. I think it's just the drummer and the guitarist, the one remaining guitarist. But Zach, my kid, that was mostly my full-time employee at the record shop, was the singer and the bass player, and he wasn't on that one either. So.
I love how you call them your kids.
Well, they were like my kids, man. They were like my sons. That story. They were in 10th grade, 14 and 15. They worked for me, and I got them into all this music. I was like their dad.
It's funny because I just remember, like it just popped in my head. There was one person you called like your kid, and it was like this little chick who was about 4 feet tall.
Oh, that's Cherie. She worked for me at barbecue. She was also like my child, because that's the thing about metal. Metal is so unifying. It makes people draw together, and she had a really shitty parentage. Like both her parents lived on the street, and she was not going to have that.
Dude, I will tell you,
change, but I helped her.
I have never seen somebody just so ferocious in the pit.
Oh, she's a demon.
That little 90 pound, 4 foot tall, and dude, she was fucking shit up. It was amazing, dude. Like, I kind of almost
she doesn't take shit. And that's what happened. Is her parents were both addicts. They'd always like hit her up with money, and she'd be suckered into it. And she finally got sick of it and told them to fuck off. And she was in metal, and like I was there with her. I would kind of like see her at work, or we'd hang out sometimes outside of work, and I was like her metal dad. That's what she called me.
Yeah.
I got her into all these bands, but then I always told her, I said, you got to do what you got to do, man. They're your parents, but you can't keep giving them money. They're going to just bleed you dry all your life. And she went to school, She's now a nurse. She's married. She has 2 really cute kids. She's really happy. She's making good money. She's a smart girl. She wants to be a doctor. I'm like, holy shit. But
That's
guess what?
amazing.
She still loves metal. She still rocks the shirt. She still goes to concerts.
Dude, that
Overkill is her favorite band.
she should write her. She should do an autobiography. That's incredible. That's so cool to hear, dude.
And that's
Because
cool
yeah,
because
like I said, like there was
that
almost
shows that you can get out of that. You don't have to be what your parents are. If your parents weren't great, you don't have to do that.
no, yeah, well, no, and just yeah, and in a weird way, there was almost like I would because I can't get in the pit like that anymore these days, dude. I'm too fucking old. I'll die. But just I just watch. I watched. I think the last time I saw her was at like uh,
And she's cute as hell too. She's really an attractive girl, but she's so cute, you know, and she's so funny and just the sweetest, nicest person you'll ever meet. And her daughter is just her daughter's like a cartoon. She's unbelievably cute. This little girl. She's got to be in movies. You should. I don't know if you're friends with her on Facebook, but it's just ridiculous how cute her kids are. I mean, she's such a great person. I love Cherie. But that's one of the things about metal that is so unifying. People act like it's this heinous, evil, horrible thing. It's not. It's like good people like it, you know, and it actually helped Cherie get through her shit between her music and all of her other friends.
yeah, yeah. So I
Her
mean, like I said,
determination.
yeah, so cool. It's cool that she's doing good, you know. So yeah, like I said, I mean, I was really, I was, you know, like at first you're like worried, like you're like, Jesus Christ, dude, she's gonna get killed, you know. But no, dude, she's just, you know, she's just
It
tearing
was
it up,
funny
you
too
know.
because my old roommate, this guy named Andrew, he was a metal kid too, and he was like another one of my kids. He used to hang out at the Abyss.
Hmm.
He had a girlfriend that was just beating him up, like mentally, like he was just going through the ringer with this girl. And I guess Cherie came over to our house one day when we lived together, me and Andrew, and like she said something about this guy that Andrew was fighting with, who was this girlfriend's other guy, like her ex. And they were gonna fight. Like these 2 guys were gonna fight over this girl. And Cherie came over and said, "Oh, is this the girl you're fighting over?" Yeah, I saw her with this guy. She's with this dude. And they're both like, "What?" So she actually made these guys stop fighting, become friends, and then go confront this girl at her work and be like, "You're a fucking whore." This is like all it took was Cherie coming over one night and hanging out, going, "Oh yeah, she's a whore. She's fucking this guy and this guy." I'm like, what? It was just kind of funny because Cherie's just like no bullshit in your face, like, "Oh yeah, this guy's fucking you over, by the way." So, and it was funny because like ever since then, like Andrew thought she was one of the coolest people because she ripped the lid off of that. And no one else either knew or would say anything. But interesting times. Well, shit, we've
Ruined.
been going for an hour and a half. Should I give you my big surprise before we end it?
I didn't know you had a surprise. What is that?
I didn't get all the way through it. In fact, I only got to the first song, but I listened to the newest Immolation record.
Okay.
So
And
far, I gotta say, it was not terrible, but I was listening on my phone, so I couldn't really get a good listen because I was cooking dinner because I was trying to hurry because we had to do this. But so far, so good. I mean, I'll have to give it a more abject listen, like in the car or in here tonight before I go to bed or something. But
that's crazy because I haven't even listened to the new Immolation yet. I think I listened to one track off of it, but I
well,
they're
I
another one
gotta
of those bands
like
that's
just
just
like
solid to me.
I'm thinking of Immolation like way back, like in the 90s again. Like I just didn't like it. I was a different person then. I liked different music then, but I'm not getting into technical stuff. However, I can appreciate it more.
Yeah,
I figure if I can listen to Evil Conscience and Decapitated, I could probably give these guys another chance. And they're not quite as
they're not as technical as either of those bands, if you ask me. Like Immolation is more. I'd say Immolation is more almost on the blackened side of death metal than on the like thrashy traditional. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
you don't
They're
think
more.
they're technical?
Oh, I think they are. I think any death metal band that's kind of been around that long, just by nature of playing the way they do, are gonna be technical to a point, you know. Um, but I think they use their technicality, not as a, and I think most bands, any good band that's technical doesn't use technicality for the sake of technicality. You know what I mean? They use it to kind of serve a song or to make it like eerie sounding. And I think Immolation really tries to push the eerie kind of.
They didn't use technicality for the sake of technicality.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was a very technical statement you've just made.
Technically it was.
Well, if you want to get technical about it, of course.
Well, I don't want to.
You want to get technical or technicolor?
Well, it's Technicolor, Technicolor, kind of a Walt Disney thing.
It wasn't Walt Disney.
Wasn't it Technicolor?
I don't think so. They probably might try to ape it and own it like they did with Grimm's Fairytales, those motherfuckers. But
What?
I think Lost in Space was filmed in Technicolor. All the '60s shows were Star Trek.
Let me guess. When you said Grimm Fairytales, so were you raised on the real shit like I was?
Yeah,
Where
I
you're
had
like,
these books. I'm like, wait a minute,
yeah,
why is Disney suing? I remember it was Ice Capades or something, or like some awards show, like back in the '90s. They had an opening thing of like people ice skating, and there was a girl that looked like Snow White. She had the same dress, and Disney sued them. I'm like, fuck you, Disney. You don't own Snow White. You didn't write that. That's Grimm's Fairy Tales.
yeah, and we had the real ones where
Fuck
like
you, Disney.
Cinderella's sisters
Yeah,
tried to.
Cinderella. They didn't write
They,
Cinderella and like all that
yeah,
shit. Like, fuck Disney, right up their fucking
and,
ass.
and Cinderella's stepsisters cut their
Poor
fucking
cunts.
heels off and toes to try to fit into the glass slipper. And then the big bad wolf, like when ate the grandma, right? So
Yeah, it
grandma
was.
died. Grandma
Who was it? It
died.
was Grimm's Fairy Tales, and there was another one too. It was like I can't remember the other one, like Brothers something or Grimm. Was it Brothers Grimm?
Brothers Grimm, yeah.
Who was the other? There was another fairy tale like company like from like way back that did those too. I remember I had the books. They were old storybooks,
Me too, yeah, dude. And
and
I'd
there's
read them.
some of the
I'd read
pictures in there like used to trip me out. Like these
oh, dude, the Hansel and Gretel freaked the fuck out of me. The
Hansel and
witch.
Gretel, but there was another one. It was a story about a rooster and a fox or something, or some animals that like tried to do something, and these giant guys captured them. And the giant dudes were illustrated in this book, and it freaked me out when I was like 2 years old reading it every night.
I think it was
I remember those books. I remember even Cinderella. I'm like, that wasn't Disney. Who the fuck do they think they are? They don't own that shit. They just like swooped in and took it, and they're suing people for it. Like,
well,
how did we get on this anyway? I said Grimm's Fairy Tales.
Immolation, of course, because when you talk about immolation, you think of Red Riding Hood and how the woodsman cut him open and fucking sewed up rocks inside the wolf. Said,
The original name of Hansel and Gretel was Dawn of Possession, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That was the original story name.
It's funny, like Hansel and Gretel. One of my favorite Looney Tunes is their Hansel and Gretel. Those two fat little German kids. I'm Hansel. I'm Gretel. Anyway.
Those things weren't very politically correct either back then. At least
Oh,
they
hell no, dude.
So today.
No, in fact,
Actually, a lot of them were like really anti-Nazi propaganda things where it said Hitler was a stinker or something, But it was
yeah. I mean, you'd have like Bugs Bunny like kicking Hitler in the ass and that kind of stuff. No, I mean Looney Tunes were great, dude. But there was like your what was probably the most politically incorrect one was the Injun Joe. The little guy like with the beard. He's like, I got a secret, I won't tell. And there's a giant Indian, and he tickles the Indian with his beard, and the Indian falls off a cliff. And it shows like this big aerial view of the United States and all the territories getting like taken over. And in a weird way, it was still kind of like a socio-political statement of like, holy shit, we really screwed over the Native Americans. But or I guess indigenous is what we call them now.
That's interesting too, because you've seen Back to the Future, right?
Yeah, where a white guy goes back and shows Chuck Berry how to.
Well, that's
how to play rock and roll.
But the funny thing too is, if he goes into the record, or he didn't actually go in the record store, but he walked past it. No, it wasn't the record store. they had a sign for it, but he went into the diner and they were listening to the song "The Ballad of Davy Crockett." Do you know that song?
Nope.
I can't remember who sings it, but it's like a really old, just like stuffy old white middle America song, and it's about Davy Crockett and how he killed Indians, and they called them Injuns and stuff, or Redskins, or something like that, and how he just killed them and got rid of them.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a really racist song, and it was just available as a 45-inch record, or not a 45-inch, but like a 45 RPM record.
Right.
It was just like I
That was a
I
big fucking
downloaded it.
record.
What's that?
That would be a big fucking record.
Well, yeah.
45-inch plate.
I downloaded that song though, just for the hell of it, just for something to download. When I listened to it, I was like, holy shit, this is really fucking racist, man. God damn. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow. I was gonna put it on the PA at work because I thought it'd be funny just to have that because it's an old fuddy 50s song. But when I listened to the words, I was like, oh shit, maybe not.
Yeah. You don't want to.
Like, man, that was. But
I
anyways.
That's where Burzum got a lot of his ideas, I think.
Oh shit, probably. That's probably how you know that because you listened to him, you fucking goddamn Nazi.
Oh, and I was also going to say, like, I also
Fucking
wondered that
sympathizer.
if one of the reasons you have a problem with Scott Burns is that didn't the guys in Mayhem like threaten to like kick his ass one of these days, way back in the day?
Well, no, I don't remember if they
Wasn't there a beef, like a beef between the black metal guys and Scott Burns?
They may have said something, but there was on Euronymous' label, Deathlike Silence Productions. On the back, there was a little thing going for a while with each release. It had like the circle with the line through it, like it had a smiley face with a circle with a line through it, or it had Anton LaVey on one with the line through him, like his picture, because they figured out Satanism wasn't about burning churches and stuff, so they thought, well, fuck him. But they had one that had a picture of Scott Burns also with like a circle with a line through it.
Okay.
The Terrorizer record, because they were just anti-trends, anti-core, like anti-grindcore. They were like all about like old school black metal and thrash. That was the thing back then.
True cult.
Exactly. True Norwegian, true black metal, true. Although it didn't start in Norway, that's the thing. Is black metal started all over the world, really. Blasphemy,
Greece,
all the bands from Greece, Sarcophago from Brazil, Blasphemy from Canada, Beherit from Finland, a couple other bands, Mortuary Drape, Master's Hammer, Vaughn,
Mortuary Drape. Mortuary Drape is French, aren't they?
They're Italian, I think.
What's the difference?
Hey, I'm Italian, god damn it.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. What's the difference?
You motherfucker.
French, Italian. You know who else is Italian?
Bulldozer.
No, he might be French, actually. Terry Lewis from XYZ.
Oh, man, come on. What about Vito Bratta?
Vito Bratta, that doesn't get more Italian than that. That guy looks like fucking Harry Connick, with hair.
He looks like Eddie Van Halen, kind of.
Plays like Eddie Van Halen, kind of.
Oh, shit.
He's one of my favorite. Like, there used to be, like in Category 5, when I'd have to write a guitar solo, it'd always be like, me and Dustin would say, what would Vito Bratta do?
You know who else is Italian? It's a guitar whiz. Is Vinnie Vincent. His real name is Vincent Cusano. That's Italian.
Yeah. I also used to say, what would Pete L'Esperance do? But he's French Canadian.
Well, that doesn't count.
From Harem Scarab. Steve Vai.
Do you like Cryptopsy? Speaking of Canadian bands.
Yeah, I do. But there's only one album I really listen to, and that's the one with Lord Worm on it, and it has the song. I don't even know what it's called. Thou shalt not be afraid from the terror by night and the arrows that flieth by day, and what's it called? I can't even think of the name of the song, but it's really cool.
Pages up here. I think it's called Hymns of the Blasphemous because their second one is called None So Vile. That's the one everybody likes. That's when they really broke big.
Yeah. So
Blasphemy Made Flesh. That's right.
Yeah.
You know, it's a funny thing about trading death metal is, again, I mentioned how I got disordered all over the place back in the day, and now they're like a cult legend band because they inspired all these other bands in the places where I used to trade.
Uh-huh.
Is I got Cryptopsy's tapes from Morbid Records like years and years ago before they ever broke big, and I used to sell them in my catalog, and all my friends here had a copy of it.
Uh-huh.
And not too long after that, that tape came out on CD, and then the second one came out, and people were just like jizzing over Cryptopsy like uncontrollably for like a while there.
Yeah,
Another
it's
band called Brodequin. Have you ever heard them? They're kind of like Cryptopsy. They have a crazy drummer too.
Brodequin.
Brodequin.
Actually, it might have been. Was it None So Vile?
I got that one
Uh,
in trade too
the
years
the
ago.
pestilence. It's called the pestilence that walketh in darkness. It's one of my favorite songs. Um, but I don't know what album it's on. Cryptopsy. I don't, dude. I sometimes when I get in this mode where it's like, oh man, I'm such a poser. It's like I don't even know what album it's on.
Wow, I didn't
Uh,
know Cryptopsy also had quite a few albums. I didn't. They had one as recently as 2018, an EP. It looks like.
yeah. So okay. So the pestilence is off. Once was not. That's the album.
What's that?
Once Was Not is the album that I tend to listen to the
Yeah, I don't know.
most of it. It's a good song. Like check out The Pestilence That Walketh in Darkness.
Do you like the
Psalm.
band Pestilence?
I like Pestilence, yes. I haven't checked out some of their newer stuff, but
You haven't
I
heard the
remember
Spears album?
I had Spheres, yeah. That's the one I really kind of dug into because they went like really kind of
Oh yeah,
proggy
totally.
death.
Do you have the
My.
one before that, Testimony of the Ancients? You'd probably like that one a lot too.
No, I don't have that one. And what's the other one where it's got a guy covered in ants?
That's their second record. That's called Consuming Impulse, and that's the second one and last one to feature their first vocalist, Martin Van Drunen, who became the singer of Asphyx for like years after that.
Oh, okay. That's another
And
thing I like about like the death metal scene is like sort of their kind of the communal like where they just like are sharing members, you know?
well, check
It's like
this out. Martin Van Drunen left that band on kind of bad terms. I think they've made up since then, but he was going to be the singer of Bolt Thrower, but he had medical issues at the time.
mm,
So Dave Ingram of Benediction did that Bolt Thrower record with them.
oh,
And then I am friends with Dave through, let's
the
say, an
same.
infernal connection. And he's got another band I'm releasing a 7-inch of in the next few months here called Stygian Dark.
That sounds familiar. Have they put out anything before?
No, I think they had a full-length album just come out not too long ago on another label, but I'm doing a 7-inch EP, but it's been taking forever because the vinyl industry is just fucking whacked right now. Plus plastic and COVID and everything, inflation is just making things fucking nuts to release CDs and
Yeah.
records at the moment. But there is
Okay.
that coming up. So Dave's the singer of the band Stygian Dark. It's a project band with the guitarist of Paganizer, another Swedish death metal band.
Yeah.
And there's another guy called Arwen who's from an old death metal band called Dead End in there as well. And I don't remember the other member's name, but they're all. Oh, it's another guy from Wombbath, which is another Swedish death metal
Oh, I know.
band.
Yeah, I know Wombbath. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
actually put out a 7-inch of Wombbath as well, like a couple of years ago. It was a split with another band.
I like those guys. Yeah, I like Wombeth.
And I know we've
Um,
talked about this before, but Wombbath, I also have a project band called Skineater, which I've released on the label too, which you would really like that one as well.
it's
Someday
interesting.
you gotta meet, you gotta come eat some barbecue. I'll give you these books and some
I
CDs
will.
too.
Yeah, I was gonna try to do it this week, but like I said, I
Well,
got
this week sucked. This week was so fucking
okay.
ridiculous. I'm amazed I had time to even do this tonight. We've gone for
And
almost 2 hours.
yeah, and I was like it's funny because I was thinking about this today. There's a like I was thinking about like the future of like the music scene or like the industry in a way, right? And so you know me, I like kind of wimpy melodic rock a lot.
Yeah,
And
you're pussy.
there's a record. Okay, so there's this record label called Frontiers Records, and I don't know how I should feel about it because one of my favorite bands, they release their albums, which is Harem Scarum. But what they do, okay, what Frontiers record does is they just take all like every fucking AOR like melodic rock band that's ever existed. This label is like just taking members and like creating new bands out of like these other members. Like, so you'll have like the drummer of Journey, the guitar player of Whitesnake, and then the singer of Pretty Maids or something, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just kind of like these one-off projects. And I I don't know how I feel about it because the music's kind of like it's kind of getting a little bit generic, but I also think like it might be the new model of like labels, you know what I mean? Where it's like you just like take so if you're extreme metal label, you're just gonna hit up like you know bass player of fucking um, Immolation, and then you're gonna throw him with the vocalist of uh, you know Carcass, and then get the drummer of Deicide, you know what I mean? And we're gonna create
That's
this new
how a lot of
band
these
and do
bands are
like
these days. I think it's like more so it's like a loose or even a tighter association through just the fact that rock and metal are shrinking kind of in the public eye.
I
So
don't think
everybody's
it's
banding
shrink.
together and it's always been like that with death metal. They always have bands that are like side projects of all these other guys,
Sure,
but
you
you
know,
always
and
see bands like Foreigner, but they're playing with members who are in Quiet Riot, you know. I'm like, what the fuck? That's where that wouldn't have happened in the 80s, but it's happening now because there's just so
it's
few
like
people
Dawkins, yeah,
involved.
like
Rock.
well, and another thing though, I don't think it's necessarily that the industry is
Plus
shrinking.
people
I
are
think
dead too. So
well, one, it's like okay, if you're gonna, you know, try to make a living at this, you got to probably have as many projects going as you can, and also it's easier to do that these days, you know, with technology. So it's hit and miss. Like I think it could actually be a really good thing, you know, where it's not so much like all these separate bands, but just these projects where of collaborations between, you know, uh, other musicians from other bands, and a lot of times they're just one-offs, you know, like we did this one album, we're done. My problem with Frontiers is it almost sounds like there's like a almost like they have one writer, almost like Desmond Child is writing every one of their songs for every band on the roster.
you know what though?
But there's occasionally some gems there, and I was like, this could work if it's done in a way where it's like, look, what I feel with the Frontier stuff is that some of this shit is throwaway music. You know, it's like, well, we're not going to put everything into this because this is just my paycheck, so I'm not going to use my good riffs for this band. You know what I mean?
It sounds like
But
what you're describing is they're trying to kind of like very covertly kind of bring rock and roll and metal back to the forefront of music because it's been banished for so long because of fucking rap and hip hop.
not,
And I don't have a
I don't,
problem with that. Even if it's half-assed, I'm all for it.
well, no, and that's me too. Like, and that's why I was like, well, I think it's starting to have some like kind of reach this point of like a saturation point where a lot of this stuff is sounding the same to me, but I'm like the model of it, not necessarily the music that's being created right now, but the business model of just like, look, I'm going to take so with Frontiers, you know, it's like okay, we're going to take Jeff Pilson from Dawkins, and then I'm going to get the singer of King's X, and then we're going to get Red Beach from Winger, and then we're gonna get you know Dean Castronova on drums, and we're gonna call it Jaded Loins, you know, and we're gonna make an album cover that has like a fucking family crest with tigers on it, and it's gonna look all AOR, you know, and then they're gonna put out an album, and like I said, I think a lot of it seems a little half-assed to me, like the musicians are sort of dialing it in, but I'm like, if this could evolve into something where it's just like, okay, you know what? We have our bands, but every project is just as important, you know, as it could be just as impactful, you know. I don't
Well,
know.
some
Like
of these guys,
I
like,
think it's the new model. I think it's a new model for labels. I think, and I'm wondering if
well, look at it like this. So I'm a death metal label. I'm one guy doing it. I'm not like putting bands on tour, giving them money to go to the studio. I'm just putting out their CD. But that's kind of a depository for those kinds of bands. Is like Skineater. It's guys from
Hip hop.
Sabaton and Wombbath, Swedish bands, but that's their technical death metal band. I put out a CD. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
But their
yeah.
main band, Wombbath, is on like another label that has more money, so they can give them more money, and that's cool. I don't have a problem with
Well,
that.
Sabaton.
David Ingram from Benediction, who did the Bolt Thrower album, he's been the singer of Benediction for like decades,
Sure.
and he still is. They just put out a new record not too long ago, but then he
Right.
just did this band, and I'm putting out their 7-inch, but the
Mhm.
CD's coming out on another label. So
Yeah.
that's all cool. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. That's cool. It's like everybody gets a piece of the pie.
But I'm wondering, like, if I think it's still a fairly new kind of model of doing things, but like, yeah, just get these like kind of in a weird way, it could either fall flat, but you might get like a mixture, like it's almost like an experiment. Like, what if we got this guy from this band and paired them up? They maybe even never met. They might not have chemistry, and I think that's sometimes what happens, which is why a
Like I
lot of
said,
these,
I'm all for it because it just means more rock coming out and more people getting into it.
yeah,
Which is funny because I was on Facebook looking through the news feed, and I have an ex-girlfriend who's in this shit like ABBA and just female rap and just all kinds of weird, crazy shit. But she was taking pictures of the Greta Von Fleet concert, and aren't they're like a new kind of rock band, right? Like one of those Zeppelin-esque
yeah,
rock
yeah,
bands.
kind of Zeppelin-y, uh-huh.
So I'm like, well, look, there's people getting into rock. That's what I need to see because I am so
Right.
sick of hip hop. I'm like, fucking enough. God, it's just the same shit over and over. It's meaningless. It's not even
Uh,
real music. And like, it's just
I mean, I
fucking.
don't know. Like, I have like, there's some hip hop I sort of have a soft spot for, mainly because like I had a girlfriend that was really into
Well,
it.
I like some old rap like Ice-T, Ice Cube, NWA, Public Enemy, Two
Yeah,
Live.
but
That's
it's
all
gotten
fine.
really kind of
But
just
this
it's
new
almost
shit is just fucking crap. It's like the pussiest, fucking stupidest canned. It's like guys in their bedroom, like I just said about certain death metal bands or black metal bands. It's just fucking
sound,
crap.
sounds lazy. I don't know.
It's
That's all.
dumb. It's just fucking processed bullshit. It's like today's pop. There's no real music, no real songwriting, no real drums being played. Even Desmond Child is not being consulted. I'm like, fuck, this is canned shit. Like,
Yeah,
literally. It's fucking
we need.
stupid. So if there's more rock bands coming out, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
I think people are ready for it. I think people are ready for rock and roll again. Because look at Ghosts, how big they are. I mean, they look creepy and that's cool, but really their music is catchy and accessible, and that's why people can get into it.
I still need to listen to it. They're another one that I'm
Well,
just like,
I'd say I'd
oh
send
man,
it to you, but I know you'll obstinately not listen to it. So
I'll listen to it. You
I'll
don't need to
send you some
send it to me.
stuff. Now, did you
I can
happen to
listen.
listen to Revenant yet?
I haven't listened to Revenant yet.
All right, well,
Look, I listened to
Resurrection. But you
Resurrection.
like Resurrection, correct?
Yes, I did.
I told you they were pretty good.
I know. You did.
There you go.
You, you showed me.
I did show you. Well, that's not why I sent it. I just wanted you to listen to it because I knew you'd like it.
You proved me wrong. No, I liked
Well,
it,
you
yeah.
didn't say that they were going to suck.
I know, but you
I
thought I
knew
would.
you'd like them. But anyway,
All right, let's wrap this shit up.
I think you should, at some point, we got to meet. I'll let you borrow Lords of Chaos, the movie, and some of those books, and we can go further on those. So let me know
Okay.
when you can do that. I'm always at work now.
All right, till next
Good night,
week.
America. Good night, world, and all other planets that may be listening.
Good night, trees. Good night. I'll miss you the most, Scarecrow. All right.
Oh my God.
Yeah. All right,
Did you
brother.
say what I think you just said?
You bet your barbecued ass I did.
Wow. You fucking evil thing.
All right.
Okay. We'll be talking
Okay.
to you.
Okay, man.
Oh, hold on a second. Where's that stop button?